So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, Aston Villa fans. Delighted to be back again today, talking more about more Aston Villa signings, and also from one of our brothers in the PSR party. We have Mike from the wonderful Unholy Trinity podcast. It's an Everton podcast. They're also part of the Sports Social Podcast Network. We've done a lot of things together during the past as well. But Mike, I'm delighted to have you on. I suppose predominantly today to talk about Lewis Dobbin, because I think one thing that's got lost in the mix is that Villa and Everton have actually traded two pretty promising players that potentially neither club really wanted to lose.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, we were with Lewis Dobbin, especially. We as a fan base thought he'd very much be part of the squad next season. Before Jack Harrison's loan was announced yesterday, we'd lost obviously him. He'd gone back to Leeds. Dan Juma's loan had finished. He'd gone back to Villarreal. So in terms of wide players and options available, it was only really him and Dwight McNeil. So it was a bit of a surprise, really, when his name cropped up a few days ago to say that, he was pretty advanced with Aston Villa. Obviously, Tim Irabunum came the other way just before the Dobbin signing was announced as well. But no, he was most definitely a part of our plans, and we thought he was certainly an exciting prospect going into the new season, and one we wanted to see a lot more of as well.
Yeah, and I think we would echo the exact same sentiment about young Tim. We call him young Tim because I was telling you off air there a while ago, probably one of the only kind of smiley moments that Steven Gerrard gave us as Aston Villa fans is the day that you could see him in his mind saying, I can't pronounce that surname, so I'm just going to call him young Tim here. And he was fond of Tim as a player. I saw Tim playing his debut against Norwich, and he was very, very competent footballer. He was obviously younger at the time. We got him from West Brom, brought him in, nurtured him. Mark Harrison knew him inside out, sent him on loan to QPR, and then when he came back, I think more so he would have got more time this season, only for the fact that he was kind of a victim of us almost having white line fever at the end of the year, and we needed to just like we drained our senior players, and it wasn't really a time to bring in the likes of young Tim. But he did get a few minutes towards the end of the season as well, and I think, in heart of hearts, maybe Unai Emery didn't fully trust him for a starting role within the Villa team as it was last season. But an off season can have a massive effect on a player, a positive effect, should I say, on a player, specifically a young player, and 9 million is market value for him. I genuinely do, and he's got a couple of Premier League appearances under his belt, and he's got a good loan at QPR under his belt, similar to Lewis Dobbin, who has Premier League goals scored, unlike some other players that have moved for massive fees in previous transfer windows. So I know I keep on being very snide about the PSR stuff, and I know this is the last I am going to talk about it in our podcast because I'm very sick of talking about it. But this is the one, and I feel sorry for Lewis Dobbin, to be honest with you, Mike. I feel sorry for him because it's his face and Tim Irabunum's face that are being plastered all over every publication, saying that the Villa and Everton have done something wrong. And I just think that it's deriding or denigrating the players and their potential ability as well, because they're two fine footballers that could very well make a difference to a Premier League squad, even in this coming season as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for the two players involved, they just want to get on with their careers, and I'm sure for both, Lewis Dobbin, he's going to a side in the Champions League, so incredibly exciting for him to be involved with that and to be working under a world-class manager in Unai Emery, who turned your club around, after the debacle of Steven Gerrard, and how he tainted your football club. Probably the best way for me to describe that as an Everton fan. Or maybe desecrate is probably an even better word, but we won't go any deeper into that. But, he came in when you were in and around where we were. We still had Rafael Benitez as our manager. You brought in Emery, he pulled you right away. You got your European football straight away, and then he kicks on again. So for Lewis Dobbin to go into that side and into that club fabulous traditional club, very, very similar to us. I think in terms of, the historical side of things, a fantastic stadium. It'll be great for him, and he must be massively excited. And the same with, with Tim coming to ourselves, obviously slightly different. We've had a few tricky years over the last few years. As fans, we've lived it. We've all aged. I'm only 20 years of age. I look about 57. But no, it's been tough. But for him to come in, the future is bright now. We've got potential new American owners who also own Roma in the Three King Group, who are very, very close now to hopefully getting things ratified with the Premier League and doing their due diligence. We've got what I would probably describe as what's going to be the most iconic stadium in the country, nearly, about 5 months away from being completed on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey there. That's a game changer for the football club. And I'm sure any new signing that comes in, they're shown that. And if they're not, they should be getting shown now on that ground. Get your hard hat on, get in there and go and experience it, because that's a game changer. And I'm sure a lot of players want to play their football there week in, week out. So for both of these young lads, never mind the whole PSR and the whole backstory, it's their career. I'm sure they're excited. And what the story should be is, two good young English players who have got a good move for both of them. And it's an exciting future for the two of them and for both clubs as well.
I agree. And yes, I meant to say about your new stadium, I think Goodison Park is probably the other stadium outside of Villa Park I've been to. Well, actually, I know for a fact it is, because I've been there 5 times, to Goodison Park. So, it's the other stadium I've been to the most, I think, in the UK. And it's, I like the traditionalness of it. I like the fact that there's still a wooden stand there and things like that. But that new stadium is an absolute belter. And it looks like that drone footage that was released recently was just like, it was breathtaking. And the fact that, like, us Villa fans heard that you guys are going to have Wi-Fi there, you're after doing a deal with a Wi-Fi company, and we're like, we can't get Wi-Fi.
We've got. I think it's HP Enterprises who are the ones who are in charge. I mean, as soon as you walk into Goodison Park, listen, your phone signal is gone for about 2 hours. Even when you leave the ground, it doesn't come back. It takes a while to return. So it'd be like a new world for us, experiencing some kind of internet coverage when we're in the stadium. That's for sure.
Yeah, I tagged Chris Heck, our CEO, straight away when I read that article, and I said, Chris, you got to get on this one straight away. Wi-Fi at Villa Park. Fans are going to be massively satisfied if that can be the case. And I think he actually had mentioned previously that they are doing a deal with somebody for Wi-Fi at Villa Park, which is it's a massive first world problem, but still it's worth fixing, I think, at the same time. But going back to Lewis Dobbin. Obviously he scored that belter against Chelsea in the Premier League, and he had that loan at Derby County. But what's your views on the actual player himself? There's a lot of people kind of thinking that he's coming into Aston Villa to play on that left wing, but the more I've kind of watched him, he's kind of played across that front three. If maybe my eyes are deceiving me, but what's your view on him?
Yeah, obviously, he has spent a lot of time on the left-hand side, coming off the bench, though, really. I mean, he only started one game last season. I think it was the Wolves game, if memory serves me correctly, early on. So he wasn't given a great deal of game time. I think it was 12 Premier League appearances. He suffered an ankle injury near the back end of the season as well, which kept him out when really, we were short of players and could have really done with him. So he hasn't had loads of minutes under his belt, but I think overall competitions, he made 18 appearances, scored obviously that great goal against Chelsea, which I'd said it before, it's probably the purest moment of the season for me in terms of experiencing that live, and the celebration. Sean Dyche alluded to it at the time, nothing choreographed. It was just pure emotion and elation and living in the moment. And for him, obviously, it was fantastic to get his first senior goal for the club. But in terms of it as a player, he's obviously quick. He's got pace. He's direct. He will go at your full-backs. I mean, I wouldn't look to try and play him central across a front three, if you like. But right or left, I think he'd be comfortable. Certainly on the counter as well with his pace. He's not scared to go at defenders. And I always say speed kills. And in football nowadays, how often do you look at a player, and if you've got a bit of pace, it can sometimes hide sort of the maybe lack of footballing ability. But with him, he's got both. I think that a lot of development to do, but he's an exciting player, and is one I always refer to them as seat clickers. So if they get hold of the ball and they go, everyone's up, and you hear those seats, don't you? And you hear the seats one by one, like a wave of noise. And he's one of them. And I think going to Villa, playing with players likes of Bailey and Diaby and Rodgers, who's been I think a fantastic success since he's coming from Middlesbrough, and Ramsey as well. There's quite a few players there who would be vying for a position with, but you can learn a lot from them. And I think you probably see quite a quick development over the next probably 6 to 12 months with him. But he's certainly, as I say, he's direct, he's exciting, he's quick, he's got a decent shot on him, and he's not put off by the opposition either.
Well, the 2 goals I've seen him score, that one against Chelsea was, that was, how would I put it? He put his full force behind that one when he was kicking it. And then he scored a goal for Derby from a corner. I think the ball was headed out and he just literally connected right in the laces, and it arrows into the top corner. One of those ones that when you see it, you're like, yeah, close goal of the season. It's just done. That's it. That's just been done. And for anybody who was watching this, think Jack Grealish versus... I can't remember, versus Derby, actually, I think it might have been, and think John McGinn versus Sheffield Wednesday. They're the 2 types of goals I'm referencing when I'm talking about this one that Lewis Dobbin scored. But it seems like that he's well able, he's got some very, very good technique. Now, I did hear some Derby fans saying that he's missed an odd chance, when he gets in front of goals, he can fluff his lines a small little bit, which doesn't really bother me, because as a young player, the nerves do get you, and experience kind of cools the blood a small little bit in front of goals as well. So, if those 2 goals are anything to go by, just give him the ball and let him instinctually just ping it into the top corner, because, as I say, it's that's a skill in itself, being able to just pull the sublime out of nowhere too. What do you think from, I personally think he's probably going to go on loan this year. Maybe at some stage. I don't think he's going to start the season on loan. I think we're going to take a look at him. I think maybe the loan season kicks in after the and Villa have a habit of doing this, where the loan season kicks in after the first EFL Cup game. And I think Villa are going to take a look at him for that. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts a lot of games in pre-season, and maybe he goes on loan to a championship club. Do you think that's probably the best avenue for him for this year? Because Villa have signed him on a 5-year deal now. So and this is one of the things, going back to the PSR piece. If I'm not expecting him to play this year, but that's his talent will be borne out over the value of his contract over those 5 years. Even though he's only 21 years of age, Villa might be looking for him in next year or the year after, and to get him to grow in that aspect as well. But do you think that's probably the best avenue for him, is to go out for a year to a top end championship club?
It's possible. I mean, last season, if circumstances were different at our football club, and we could have brought more players in, obviously restrictions financially meant that we couldn't, then he would have been loaned last season, to be honest with you. I don't think he was really seen as a player at the time who was going to be sort of starting week in, week out, which he didn't, or even a regular squad player, which is what he was. So I think he's almost missed a year, really, of development, you could argue, because I think any young player, he only turned 21, I think it was in January. So they need this loan time, and we've seen it now, the benefits of loaning players. We look at Jared Brandtwaite, went to PSV and played a full season away over in Holland, and then comes back and as far as we're concerned, is now worth 80 million pounds. And how he's not in the England squad for the Euros is unbelievable. But, it just shows you what a full year of development. Sometimes I say, if they go abroad, sometimes it's even better, because they come away from the limelight of English football. There's less eyes on them, and they can go and just go and learn and develop and play the football when the pressure's off, almost, in terms of the English media. So it could be an option, of course. I'm sure, like you say, they'll have a good look at him over the course of pre-season. I'm sure Unai Emery will want to see him up close and personal. Maybe they feel he can do a job, but I think that if they want him to be getting game time, the chances are, he's not going to play in the Champions League. You wouldn't have thought from early on. There's a lot of games though. Villa are going to be fighting on a lot of fronts, with obviously the Champions League being the main one. So maybe he'll keep him in and around the club. You will know better than me, but it won't do him any harm, I don't think, to go somewhere and be guaranteed, 35, 40 games a season, maybe in the Championship, just so he can keep on playing football, keep on learning his trade, and then come back in sort of 12 months' time again, and an even better player once again.
He could be somebody that gets... We've loads of agreements with loads of clubs. Like with Vitória Guimarães in Portugal as well. Yeah, we've done very little player trading with them. The only one we've done player trading with was the Emery club itself, Real Unión, in the third division of Spanish football. I don't think he's going to go there, but there will be a lot of youngsters go there. But maybe he gets loaned to one of our partner clubs on the continent as well. You know, I'm with you on that. I think learning specifically as a young player, going and learning your craft, or at least going out and experiencing a different style of football, a different philosophy of football can be helpful as well for you to come back a more rounded player. Maybe that's something that Villa do, but also, you know, I think Villa themselves in their debriefs will look and say, yeah, we kind of got caught in the rut of playing those 17 players all year last year. You know, those 17 core players. And if you're going to play in the Champions League and give it a right run, you know, you're not going to recatch lightning in a bottle like we did last season. You just won't be able to do that again 2 years in a row. I think the club are smart enough to understand that. That's why we've brought in a lot of young players in Barrenechea, Illing Jr., Lewis Dobbin, Ian Matson, Ross Barkley. Okay, Ross Barkley isn't the youngest player in the world, but we've brought in, what's that, 5 players already that I've just named, 6 players I think already that I've just named. You know, that's an interesting start to the off season. So whether Lewis Dobbin is kept around, I think, or is loaned out, I think is inconsequential to what Aston Villa think he will be in the future, because you know, they will still need bodies around the club for various different reasons, because, as you said, fighting on all different fronts. And Unai Emery is on record as saying, you know, to win a cup of any type with Aston Villa is what the fans should be looking for, and that. Even through last year, he was saying, no, we're not in the Champions League run. We want to win cups, because that's where the real immortality, I suppose, of a team comes, is winning cups, not finishing in 4th place, albeit we're bloody delighted to have finished in 4th place, specifically for this season. What do you think this season holds for yourselves, Mike? Because, as I say, Villa Everton, the oldest or the longest running game in top flight football in England, you know, 2 traditional clubs. What do you think this season holds for you guys, obviously under Sean Dyche, who's done such a brilliant job amongst all the weeds of points deductions and everything of last season?
Yeah, I think, you know, we hope for a season of stability is probably the main one. You know, this takeover, hopefully going through, will see to the off-field stuff being sorted, so to speak. You know, we've got the final season at Goodison Park, so it promises to be a really emotional time, I think, as well for us as fans. You know, as much as I'm not an overly emotional person, I think as the weeks and the games get ticked off, and, you know, clubs come to Goodison Park for the final time, you know, every single time now pretty much the side arrives at Goodison Park, it's going to be for the last time unless they come back in the cup. So I think that will hit home when we start to see the events take off. There's events planned as well. You know, the week I think the season starts, there's one in October. There's all sorts of stuff going on to commemorate the final season of Goodison Park, and I think that we want to make sure that we go out on a high, and a high being that we stay in the Premier League. You know, Sean Dyche has done an incredible job to you know, we got 48 points last season, and, you know, after losing so many off the field, which was not the players' fault, it wasn't the manager's fault, but they deserve immense credit for what they did, and the manager especially. You know, interim board being in place for, I think, about 12 months. You know, there's been no chairman. It's obviously since Bill Kenwright passed away. So the club's been very much in limbo, and Sean Dyche has been the face and the voice, and he's been in front of the cameras answering questions week in, week out. And to do all that, you know, amongst the backdrop of a failed takeover attempt by what appeared to be lunatics, you know, in terms of 777, the horror stories that came with them, and he's just got on with it. The players have got their head down and worked hard. So we hope that this season, after a smart summer in terms of players coming in, and obviously we know players will leave. Obviously we've had a couple go already, but we know we will lose 1 or 2 in terms of significant transfers. Calvert-Lewin maybe being one, Branthwaite hopefully not, but you just never know. But we've got to make sure we come out of the window in a nice solid position, and we see the season out. You know, if we can be in and around sort of mid-table, fantastic. But we don't want to be in another relegation battle. You know, imagine going into our final home game of the season against Southampton, you know, with Goodison Park, it's final bow in the Premier League, and having to get something from that game, or it being a negative affair. So very much a case of, let's try and do what we did last season in terms of points. Maybe can we push on and get to that 50-point mark, and then just have a nice quiet season would be fantastic for us, to be honest.
Yeah, Villa were looking for a lot of those for a long period of time, and then we went from having one quiet season to then all of a sudden being in Europe, and there's been nothing in between. So it was a case of just okay, we had a little bit of a nap, I think, for 10-minute nap, and then we were in Europe, and now we're in the Champions League. And look, I'm not complaining because, as I say, don't think I ever thought it would come this quickly when Unai Emery came in the door. But like you said, Sean Dyche, it just goes to show that sometimes a manager comes in and becomes the face of the club and gets a song out of that club and gets a song out of the players and just, rolls up their sleeves and knows what needs to be done. And Sean Dyche has been that man at Everton, and Unai Emery has been that man at Villa. And as you say, even amongst all those points deductions, you guys finished comfortably away from the relegation zone. Next year is a season for you guys to kick on for sure. And with that stadium, I really think the sky's the limit for you guys, particularly, I suppose, with regards to revenue generation and, putting all this PSR stuff into the back, into the back rear view mirror, I suppose, as the years go on. And Villa are thinking and looking and talking about their stadium. I know they don't want to move from Villa Park. I certainly don't want to move from Villa Park, but whether they redevelop it at some stage, I really believe that they're waiting and looking to see what happens with this new stadium specifically, because the last time a brand new stadium was built in the Premier League was the Spurs stadium. Obviously that was heavily subsidized by or was heavily dictated around NFL. There was a lot of contracts being developed already specifically for that stadium. So prior to Spurs moving in there, the revenue was already built for that, and really great work from Spurs on that point. Doing the same in Merseyside for yourselves, and then doing the same in Birmingham for us would be slightly different, even if we are just to kind of redevelop our stadium. So I wish you guys all the best at that stadium. I'm looking forward to going there someday very soon when it does open. And I wish you guys all the best for the season as well. And I wish Tim all the best, because I think you guys are going to like young Tim, because he's well able to play football. And don't let fans of other clubs tell you he isn't. That's what I'd say.
No, we look forward to any new player that comes in, especially young players, have got to be given time, and I think patience is the order of the day with him coming to us, and the chances are Onana's going to go. He's certainly one name that's being talked about leaving to go to probably a Champions League club. So I think Tim will come in naturally and probably replace him within the squad. But then, a more experienced centre midfielder will come in, the likes of Wilfred Ndidi, he's being mentioned, Calvin Phillips is another one. So we'll bring in him and another one to go alongside Garner Gay and James Garner. So obviously four fighting for two positions. So it'll be good for him, I think, to come in and learn off those solid pros as well. But he'll certainly get his opportunity this season. And Sean Dyche, I'm sure, will be eager to see him in a competitive game and see how he develops. But we're excited. We're excited to see him, of course.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, Mike, thanks a million for your time today. For anybody who wants to check out all the ongoings at Everton, as I said, the Unholy Trinity podcast at UHT podcast there on Twitter as well. Give them a follow. They're part of the Sports Ocean Network, the same as us guys here as well. So, give them a follow, give them a watch, listen to some of their stuff they've done on PSR if you want to hear the Everton side of things. And always good to help out other podcasts from other clubs as well, because if you keep just listening to your own club's podcast, you live in your own bubble. So it's always nice to listen to see what else is going around the league as well. So thanks so much for your time, Mike, and thanks so much to everybody who watched this or listened to this afterwards. We will be back as soon as anything breaks. I'm sure Aston Villa and Everton and Newcastle and Chelsea seem to be the only gig in town at the moment. I've no doubt there's going to be more transfer links today, and if there are, we will be back with more to speak on them. But once again, Mike, thank you so much for your time, and thanks to everybody for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the Villa.